Hello everyone, and welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be featuring a card with the Happy Swimmers stamp and die set from Simon Says Stamp. This stamp and die set has a little boy and little girl, and then some small accessories, some fish and some splashes and bubbles and things, and then a happy summer sentiment, a lifeguard on duty, fun in the sun, and then like the summer definition from the dictionary. It's really cute. So I'm just stamping the girl in some Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm going to be coloring her with my Copic colors. And I'm going to start with my skin tones. I'm going to be using E00, E21, E11, and E04. Normally I do add an E50 as the lightest color and use 5 colors, but my E50 is a little dry. I need to get a refill, so I'm just using the 4 colors today. And yes, the cheeks will be the R12. So I'm just going in with the lighter color and mapping out where the cast shadows would be. There'd be a longer hairline around where the mask is, kind of underneath the mask, on the underside of her arms, on her legs underneath her little swimsuit. And then I'll go in with my darkest color, my E4, and just with a real light hand go into those areas that I've got mapped out, and then I'll take my E11 and then go over that and extend those areas out and lengthen those shadows and everything. And then I'll take my E21 and then lengthen out those, and then the E11 and the E00 and fill it all in. For the little float, I'm using yellow. I'm using Y19, Y15, and Y13. So I just used the dark color around the edges to give it that rounded look, and worked my way in with the lighter colors. So next I think I'm moving on to this dress. Yeah, her swimsuit next, the R37, R35, and R32. So again, I'm just mapping out where the darkest colors would be. In this case, it'd be underneath her little inner tube, and then along her sides to create the rounded shadows. And I did also right on the tops of her straps there, just to help give it the rounded look of her shoulders. And then I go in with my next darkest color and just build back towards the lightest color and just blending it all out. And I did do a little bit of tip to tip because of the jump between the 32 and the 35 is kind of a big jump, so I just helped it out a little bit with the tip to tip method, and then I just went in and did her cheeks with the R12. Now the mask I'm going to do with the cool grays, C1, 3, and 5. And again on the sides and on the bottom curves there, just to get the round and cast shadows. And then her little flip-flops too, I just did in the dark gray. So next we'll be moving on to her hair. And I'm just doing a basic brown, 34, 57, and 59 in the earth tones. And I'm starting with the lightest and flicking in where I want those dark to be. And then I go to my mid-tones and extend it out a little bit. And then with my darkest, then I just flick in just a little bit with the darkest one. And then I'll go back to the medium and then fill in with the lightest. So then it gives me a little highlight on the top of her head, on the side, and on her little pigtails. Okay, next I'm just taking my darkest warm gray that I had out, or my darkest cool gray I had out, and I'm just creating some kind of little organic spots on the floaty. And then I had my silver wing Castella, and I just went over the goggles, and then I was going to do the float, and thinking that I had my clear wing Castella in my hand, I went over the float and kind of muddled the color, so I tried to go back in with my lightest yellow and go back over there and bring the yellow back out, but it didn't, but it's alright. I used a black glaze pen on her eyes and her little flip-flops just to kind of make those stand out a little bit. And now I'm using a liquid glass back close to my heart to put in the glass for her goggles. It's basically the same kind of product as glossy accents. So just it will go on a little milky cloudy, but then it dries back clear. So now I'm going to start on the background. I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Inks, and I'm using Rusty Hinge first, and then I took a piece of paper and I tore it, and that's going to create my definition between the sand and the water. So then after I got my Rusty Hinge on there, I decided to go in with Vintage Photo, which is a little bit darker, just to give it a little bit more depth to my sand. And then I just flipped my little piece of paper around, and I'm starting on the water. So the water next to the sand is usually a bit more turquoise looking, or at least in the Caribbean it is. So I use peacock, and that's where I love to go to the beach, it's the Caribbean. So so I use peacock feathers, and then I just blended that into a salty ocean. And the further out that you look, and, into the water, get away from the sandy bottom that you can see real well, the darker the water gets, or the darker looking it gets. So I decided to go in with a blueprint sketch at the top for my darkest color. So then as you add each color, then you go back to the color before and blend a little bit more, just to get it a smooth blend into each color. And I am using a watercolor paper for this. Okay, now I'm going to take a white Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just doing little tiny circles along the sand line, because whenever the water comes in, it has that little white foamy stuff at the edge. So I'm just using my white Jelly Roll pen in little bitty tiny circular motions to create that look of the white foam. And I'm trying to zoom in to show you, but it's not wanting to focus real well. And right at first when I put it down on there, it didn't really show up all that well, but as everything dried, the Distress Ink dried and the Jelly Roll pen dried, then you could see it really well, and it really does look like the foam. It's pretty cool. Alright, so next I'm taking some Ranger texture paste, and I put white on there, but it really kind of turned more translucent than it did white. But in this stencil that I had out of a recollection set, it's the only thing I had that had kind of like a wave to it, and I just sporadically put some texture paste all over it, just to create like some waves and some texture movement in the water. So then I just set that aside to dry. And so next I'm just going to work on some little fish and water splashes that were in the stamp set. And I'm going to use some Simon Says ink for this. I'm going to use coral reef, I believe it is, for the little fishes, because I wanted some colorful little fish. And then yes, coral reef. And then for the little splashes, I'm using island blue. And the coral reef, it goes really well with the colors that I used on the little girl's swimsuit as well. So I just decided to stamp out several. I wasn't, quite sure how many that I was going to use on the card, so I just wanted to make sure that I had enough. And these inks by Simon Says Stamp, they stamp really well, and as they dry, they smooth out even more. So they're really pretty inks to use. I just did several little splashes. Now I'm just going to take some washi tape and tape all the dies in place and take them to my die cutter. I just use a Cuttle Bug. Oh, and here I thought I stamped them where I could keep the little fishies attached, and I didn't do it right, so I ended up having to break apart my little fishies. But it is nicer if you can keep as many of your dies attached as possible. It just helps in lining up the dies and just makes it easier. But I messed it up, so I just had to line it up everything and tape it down. Sometimes these little bitty tiny dies can be a little tricky to line up. They just like to move around on you. I did go ahead and leave the boy and girl attached together. Alright, now I have everything die cut, and you can see how easily everything just pops right out of all the little dies. So I'm just putting all my little dies back into the envelope that came in. So, well, there's a close-up of that texture paste after it dried. So it really ended up looking cool. I really liked it. So then I decided to take my wonky stitch rectangle, the largest one from the set. It's by MFT Dynamics, and just cut out for it to fit on a standard A2 size card. And now I'm just playing with the placement of my fishies and my little splish splashes. And what sentiment that I want to use. I decided to use the Fun in the Sun sentiment on the front, and just in the top area I'm going to just stamp it in the island blue. I'm just going to clean that off real quick. I was just using my Close to My Heart spritz cleaner and my Close to My Heart brush. Now I'm just adhering my little swimming girl down with some fun foam to pop her up off my scene. I'm just cutting it into strips and placing it down her legs and cutting out the excess and putting it in her ponytails. I always just keep a pile of scraps in this one area of my desk, and so when I've got little spots like this, then I just take my scraps and cut out whatever I need, and that way I'm using as much as I can and not wasting anything. So I'm just taking scraps and cutting it to fit my shapes. And I got out my Ranger Multimedia mat, and I was trying to squeeze that on, but I've got the fine tip nozzle on there, and it's really only good for little areas. You try to do a big area like this, and squeezing it out is a little tough. So I just grabbed my Scotch Quick Dry adhesive and squeezed out some glue, and then adhered her down to my seam. So next, I'm just taking my white Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just adding some detail to my little fish just to dress them up a little bit more. And also go in and add a little highlight to the splish splashes. And then I will take the Ranger Multimedia mat and adhere these little guys down. The Ranger Multimedia is it's an aggressive adhesive, and so it really sticks these things down good to this uneven surface where I've got the texture paste and stuff. So no worries of them coming off or anything. So then I decided that my sand needed some texture, so I just took the same 3 brown markers that I used on her hair to dot in some sand texture, and I made it heavier around her so it was like a shadow onto the sand, and just then progressively got lighter as I went towards the water, as sand would naturally is kind of lighter towards the water. Just using those 3 markers, and then I got out my rainbow pack of Simon Says stamp cardstock and decided to go with the lighter blue cardstock, and I cut it down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I just adhered my my scene on there with some Tombow Mono permanent adhesive, and then I put this on the front of my top folding A2 size card and just had to fiddle with it a little bit. I don't think I folded my card base exactly square, so I had to fiddle with this to get this to line up, but I finally got it where I was pretty happy with it. So then I just took the other sentiment that was in the set, the Happy Summer, and I stamped the Happy in the Island Blue and the Summer in the Coral Reef. And then I added the remaining fish and splish splashes that I had stamped and die cut before. And again, I took my my white Jelly Roll pen and made some detail on those as well, and just used my Ranger Multimedia mat to adhere those down to the inside of the card. And after I got everything adhered down, I took my clear Wink Stella and went over the blue splish splashes, just to like they're glimmering in the sunshine. Oh, here's where I added the detail on the little fish and the highlights on the splashes. And then here's the Wink Stella. Add the Wink Stella to the splashes on the front. And there's the finished card. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.